Hi everyone, I'm Amber. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be reviewing Turtles All the Way Down. This is based on the John Green book. I wanted to read it back when it first came out, when it was really popular, but I just never got around to it. The only John Green book that I've actually read is The Fault in Our Stars, and that was way back a long time ago. So there's books I want to read, but it hasn't happened. This one, it's moved higher up on my list because I relate a lot to a lot of things that were happening in the movie, and then also I want to compare it to the movie because I feel like the movie missed out on a lot of little things that would explain things that the book probably had and the movie did not. I know John Green worked heavily, on the movie with them, but I just felt like things were missing. And I know when you do book to movie adaptations, there's some things you keep, there's some that you don't, but I hate it when they take away things that just explain so much and they could find a way to fit it in. So this movie is about a girl named Asa who has OCD, and she is just scared of the world. Her dad passed away when she was very young. And she had OCD while her dad was still living. She developed it at a very young age, and her dad was able to calm her down and everything. I thought it would have been interesting, if her dad was the catalyst that started her OCD, that trigger of his death, or if he died some way due to germs. But that was not it. But we didn't really see her dad taking care of her and being there for her. It was just mentioned. Apparently her mom doesn't do a good job of being there for her, though we didn't really see too much of that. It's kind of just assumed, and then when she states Mom, you can't be doing this, and it's very minimal overprotective things that her mom is doing. So I kind of just wanted to see more of a dynamic between them where her mom was more on top of her and more saying you can't do this, just to kind of validate that. And it just seemed like Asa was overreacting in terms of that because we didn't really see it. In the start, we see her talking to a therapist. She has a blister, which I don't know where the blister came from, but apparently it never heals because she keeps popping it, and that in turn she thinks when she pops it, it releases whatever disease she might be getting. She has she is very fixated on this disease called C. diff. I had no idea what it was until I googled it, and I was watching the whole movie. I'm like, what is this thing? Apparently it's some bacteria that causes your bowels to, that's enough said. You get sick. And so she's very fixated on this, and I don't know if it's because that's the one that John Green had trouble with in his youth when he had OCD. Like I said, he worked on this production, and he mentioned that he had developed OCD, and that this in turn was something that he wrote about based on things that he had gone through. And I think that in turn made me really want to watch it because that was how I related to it. I have had OCD for years. I think when I was younger, it was a lot worse. But there's moments when I spiral, Asa says, and she has her moments. And that's the only way I can describe it as well. And it's really interesting hearing people talk about their experiences and how similar they are, and these are the only words we can use to describe them. It's really fascinating to me how there's such a wide variety of words in the English vocabulary, and we only choose the few that we do to, and we all choose the same ones who have this to describe it. And the brain is a complex thing. It does many different weird things, and we are only beginning to understand it, and yet we all respond to this the same way. And I'm watching this, and I'm watching Asa, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like I do that exact same thing, or I've done that exact same thing. Um, so it's just interesting how like a disease and how like an injury, when you have similar symptoms and it's diagnosed as something because you have these symptoms that across the board many people have, how this disease, like it's the same thing, because I feel like this one's much more mental, and it's so interesting to me, like, I think it's much more focused on the brain and how you perceive things, based on what you think something has and the germs it has on it, and your reaction to it, and how they're all similar. um oh my goodness, the moments when like Asa was like scarfing down soap, and hand sanitizer because she thought she could kill whatever bacteria she had ingested or was in her system. I literally was like about to cry. I think this movie highlighted those moments very beautifully, and in a way that we all could relate to. I do think there are different things that they brought up that do need more explanation as to like what severities her condition might have. I know with OCD, there's some things you can do and there's some things you can't do. One day it's this, one day it can be that. So it is all over the place. But she very much, with the severity of her OCD, she can be in high school. She could be a normal high school student. She just has all these thoughts racing through her head, and she occasionally has spirals. And but the fact that she, is eating at a lunch table. That scene when she was eating at a lunch table, like I was in complete OCD mood watching this movie mode, and I was thinking about all the things that would have bothered me. And I was like, oh my goodness, she's eating like on a table. Like she's not even washing her hands. Like, yes, she puts hand sanitizer, but she puts it on for like things that like I normally wouldn't have. And I think, okay, it's different in that way. But like she's about to uncover her father's things, puts hand sanitizer. I would have done it before, eating, after eating. There's moments when she was canoeing and she was in the canoe and she was like, don't let the water touch me. Already being out there in like, I've been in a canoe, like, water gets in there regardless. Just by sitting in there, it's not perfectly dry. So there was moments where I'm like, okay, how bad does she have this? Because it seems like she has it pretty bad. When does it escalate? How does it escalate? Is it random? Because it appears random. But these were questions I had more just kind of like for myself, but at the same time, like I think it would have been confusing for the outsider watching it at like how random they were. So I think it would have been nice to specify certain things. But that was something that I would have liked. And to even just specify that this thing can be all over the place, like, would have been just enough for me. Like, but she makes it seem like it happens all the time to her. And if this is the case, we don't see it happening all the time. We see it sporadic. She goes in an airplane and everything. Like, you don't know who was sitting there. Like, all these different things. Her best friend, I think, was someone who I liked and I didn't like. So her best friend, she understands her, but I believe she understands her to an extent. She's supportive in a lot of ways, but she's also like doing her own thing, not supportive. Makes Asa, do things that she's not comfortable with, but at the same time, it's misleading because it comes from like a friendship kind of loving place, but also sometimes a misunderstanding place as well. So it's hard to see which one is which. So essentially what happens is the guy that Asa went to grief camp with, she went to grief camp after her dad passed away, they end up putting a reward out for if they find their dad. And the best friend is like, oh, we gotta find him, we gotta get this money and everything. And Asa's like, I don't think so. I don't think it's a good idea. And then she's like, come on, you used to know him, blah, blah, this, and blah. And she thinks that, if they go visit him, and she talks to him, that they're going to build a connection and be able to find out where the dad is, and they're going to be able to get the money. Asa's, again, not on board with this. They end up in the canoe in the back of the estate. I don't know what it is. And they end up looking at a camera that supposedly this guy ends up putting in the backyard when he was younger. Don't know how it's still there, how it's still working. And they are looking to see if there's footage of the dad on there. And they do find that he is on there and he's leaving. He has a suitcase, I think. And so Asa and the friend end up getting caught, end up in the grief friend's house, the guy, and he ends up taking a liking to Asa, remembering when they were kids, but he was also like, we haven't seen each other in like forever, but cool. And then Asa ends up having a crush on him. They end up, texting back and forth. A relationship happens. But the best friend is still kind of like looking to see if she can find out what happened with the dad. The guy already kind of knows what's going on, and he's like, it's okay, I'll just give you the money, it's the reward and everything is fine, and I still will date you even though you ended up in my premises because you were looking for my missing father. And I'm like, okay. So he gives it to her in a Pop-Tart box. She doesn't realize it until she opens the Pop-Tart box. Her friend buys a car with it. Asa, she has her dad's car, and she is very overprotective of it. And her best friend is like, well, you have a car, you have this, you have that. My family doesn't have a lot of money and this and that. But I don't see Asa being very, her family doesn't seem very abundant with money either. So it just kind of seemed really sad and off that her friend was comparing in that way. But okay, and it turns out that her friend writes a fan fiction, a Star Wars fan fiction, and Asa is she's used as inspiration for one of the characters that has a very similar name to her. And she her best friend talks about how this character is basically useless, that she's a burden, she's this. I would have been so upset. I wouldn't have forgiven her, and I wouldn't have been like, oh yeah, I get no, if you call me useless, if you call me a burden, no, that's a much more heated discussion that we have to have. But she forgives her, I think, fairly easily. I understand that Asa is not very open about, what's going on in her head all the time. But, come on, I think that her friend, sees it enough to understand. And I think she puts a lot of her own issues above that and, wants Asa to be basically normal, but understands that she's not, and is a good person, but at the same time is frustrated. And that's a different thing, And Asa, of course, has her own problems. And, there's things I need to talk out. But, that's messed up. You said that about your best friend that you've known for years. And you know that she's going through stuff, And, then they have this whole heated argument in the car. And she's like, you don't know what it's like for me, blah, blah, this and blah, blah, that. And Asa's, she's saying this stuff and she's driving. And then they get into a car accident, And she ends up in the hospital, which doesn't help her OCD. She ends up freaking out and everything. And it's just so sad, seeing all this transpire, and you're just this poor girl. And then she's also, trying to figure out, if she can go to college and where she wants to go to college, and if she can do this, because she feels like her mom thinks that she can't, because her mom doesn't want her to move out, says that she should live in the garage. And it's just I just felt for her, but at the same time, I felt like there was just things happening where I was just like, that doesn't make sense, but okay, I need more about that. So I did like the movie. I just felt like there were pieces I think were very, like, would have been very helpful to these characters, not essentially to the plot, but to these characters and who they were, and explaining more about them. And then, the boyfriend, like, he finds out that she has this, and he's like, yeah, like, it's gonna be okay. And then she's like, don't say it's gonna be okay, like, you don't understand, like, this is, like, she basically explains it to him at first that she just kind of, like, thinks differently than other people. And then she, blurts it out after she kisses him, and is like, I am afraid of germs, and this and this and that. And then after the car accident, they end up, like, at a restaurant, and she can't even, like, be next to him, let alone, she wants to kiss him, and she can't. She's like, I don't think I can do this. And she's like, well, maybe we can. And she's trying to have hope, but he's just like, I want more. And we don't see him, thinking this through, because he's a good guy, and we're just like, what happened to good guy? But we understand. But I kind of wanted to see him go through that, like, I wanted him to figure that out. I wanted to see that. But he's still very, interested in her and everything. And the girlfriend's boyfriend, he ends up having, like, art gallery thing in the subway tunnels. And then Ace is like, I'm going to be a good friend, and I'm going to go. And that's where they kind of, like, apologize to one another. But then they also find the dad's, like, coat and stuff. And that's when they realize that the dad, like, because they find, like, little hints throughout the way. And they're just like, okay, it might not mean anything. It's like, like, it's not really big to the plot. And they don't share it, really, with, like, there's a little brother that knows some things, but they don't, like, and it's not that big of a deal. But they don't share it, again, with the son, which I think would be critical. But, oh well. And they find out that he committed suicide. And that's what that meant. And they put all the pieces together. And then the boyfriend, who's no longer a boyfriend, and the brother end up having to move away. And she ends up, like, well, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I'm going to do this. And the best friend is like, I got you. And it's not her ending up with the guy. It's her, like, basically ending up with the best friend. And she's like, it's going to be hard and this and that. And then they kind of, like, show, like, snapshots of the potential future. And her going to college. But she's like, you can do this. And that's how it ends. But yeah, like, so it, like, shows her, like, in a potential relationship in the future with children, like, going to college and everything. She really wanted to go to this one college with this one professor that, like, she loves. The boyfriend, who has a lot of money, takes her on a private jet and here and there. She doesn't tell her mom, like, where she's going, which is, like, messed up. And, like, she's gone for, like, ever and everything. So she goes and she meets this lady, and this lady basically, she's, like, mind vomiting to this lady about all these different things. And again, she's very philosophical in how she speaks and what she's thinking as well. And the lady, basically the title, Turtles All the Way Down, comes from this lady. She's saying that there's this story that I forget who said for what. She's like, oh, that they were in class and they were learning about how the earth is, like, round or something. And then the lady's like, no, that's not how the universe works. She's like, the universe is on a turtle's back. And then she's like, and what's beyond that? I'm not telling this correctly. What's beyond that? It's another turtle's back. But basically saying that there's more and more and more and more to the world. There's no stopping. It's limitless. It's infinite. And that she's saying you are limitless. You are infinite. There's no, way of, there's no stopping point. You, deep down, you aren't nothing. You just keep going. Because she's also Asa also thinks a lot about, like, how a human is and how they work and how the mind works, not only just kind of like germs. She's like, if what I say is already, like, preconceived, and it's already, like, in the universe, then what is unique about me? Something like that. It's this whole theoretical thing, I'm going back to, like, my theory classes, but, like, that kind of stuff. And honestly, when I was watching that, I was like, oh dear. Like, I went through that. I endured that. I suffered through it the first class, but I ended up liking it and understanding some of it. Not liking it. I like it, some of it, and understanding some of it, but it was very hard. What made it fun, though, was the hypothetical things that we would come up with, and what we would, like, analyze. That was fun. So, yeah, that was a little much for me, but that's essentially where the name of the movie came from. So that's it. And then when she's in the hospital, just kind of, she has to get her stomach pumped, and, like, they remove the hand sanitizer, and this is just this poor girl. This poor girl, and I would have never forgiven the friend. I hope her and the boy get together in the future. Like, I just imagined a different ending at this point. Like, it would have taken a lot for me to have forgiven someone for that. I would have needed to go to therapy for that. But I think they've been friends for so long that there is some level of understanding there, but it's just kind of like, you did, like, say all those horrible things about her. Maybe you guys need to, like, really talk through things before you're just like, yeah, we got this together. But they were really good friends, so I don't know. But the boyfriend, like, I was sad that they didn't end up together, but we'll see. Who knows what happens. That's how the ending was supposed to be. Like, she just, she ended up with her best friend, and they're going to take on the world together, and she's going to get through things, and it's going to be hard, and it's going to be harder in some parts and easier in other things, but yeah. And I think that's a good way to end a movie. Not always with romance. Even if there is romance in it and you expect there to be romance, it's kind of sad when it's a romance movie, because it is kind of a romance movie, and it doesn't end with the romance, but it's okay. So yeah, those are my thoughts. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you all soon. Bye!